I think we are. Have to refresh it.
It's all good.
There. All right, there we go. It's been a while. I'm rusty. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the stream. First time in a long time, I know. I'm sorry, my bad. Driving all over the country. Don't have time for this stuff as much anymore. But yeah, welcome back to the stream. With Matt vs. Politics and Oliver Niehaus, I guess.
That's it. Yeah, there you go.
That is it. All right. First time's charm, I guess. But yeah, one thing that has just really kind of been bothering me lately is I've seen a lot of kind of cringe discourse, I think, on the left, and just it's been, I don't know, it's just been something I kind of want to explore with other people on TikTok, especially on TikTok. I've seen it. A lot of people just kind of trying to maybe out woke one another and just getting mad immediately at somebody who is on the left and has, who I think you would mostly agree with. And then one thing that they say that you don't like, you automatically kind of cancel that person. But I don't want to talk about this in the way of how the right frames it, the left is a bunch of crazy woke people. That's not the issue. But I do think there is a small issue with people that are extremely online and kind of get into this space where they just don't, but they make things where it's not appealing to a broad base. And that's just kind of a topic that I want to explore with everyone. But yeah, and if you guys don't know anybody that's on the panel, all their ats on TikTok will be down in the description once we're done with everything. And make sure you follow them on everything. But yeah, so I don't here's something I just want to kind of go over real quick. Just since 2018, I don't even know if it was 2018. Maybe it's 2019. Since 2019. Here's just a list of some really good progressive candidates that kind of got caught up in a bullshit scandal. Oh, there's LJ. What up?
What's up, boys? How you guys doing?
Good. We're live, so
it's always running late.
Yeah, it's all right. Better late than never, right? But here's just a couple of leftist candidates that have gotten caught up in a bullshit scandal and then immediately lost all their endorsements from lefty outlets, and then most of them ended up not being true. We had Alex Morse, who was a young progressive candidate who was running against Richie Neal, who's one of the most corrupt corporate Democrats. They made up a fake scandal about him supposedly texting college students and a section, being a little, little too much on text messages. It was completely made up. But as soon as the scandal came out, all the progressive groups like Sunrise Movement, the Working People's Party, people like AOC and Jamal Bowman immediately dropped their endorsement. Turned out all to be garbage. Who else? Shea Batar, who was the guy who was running against Nancy Pelosi. Somebody made up a scandal against him. Immediately, as soon as the scandal came out, lost all his progressive endorsements, all got dropped. And who else? Cenk Uygur, who literally created the group Justice Democrats, who I used to work with, got AOC elected, got Jamal Bowman elected, got a lot of these progressives, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, got all these people elected. Cenk Uygur helped create that. And then they kicked him out because back when, 20 years ago when he was a Republican, he said a bunch of dumb shit on a call-in show. So they made him lead his own group over that. And who I think, the Scott Stinger, the guy that's running in New York. He's caught up in another scandal that seems like it's pretty much all bullshit. He lost all his progressive endorsements. So I don't know, just what do you guys think of the current discourse on the left? Just kind of a little long rant intro, but I don't know, how do you think we could better go about things as far as like discourse on the left. It's a very vague intro, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a really important part is just kind of like taking a minute to gather information. I think a lot like things are happening super fast. Like you're going to get a story, you're going to get something that comes out. Just, try to like check the veracity of what you're learning. I think like there's especially in, I guess, just when it comes down to what you talked about a bit with the candidate who apparently there was an alleged scandal involving him like texting younger girls. I think that it's important to because I think there's not a contradiction, but like there's the kind of this, I guess, schism between like the Believe All Women Me Too movement, which is really important, and then also obviously the thing involving him. So I think it's important to like, I guess, like hear everyone out, but I think it's also important not to like make judgments so quick that you immediately like cast aside an entire part of the story. So I think in particular, that doesn't just go for that. I think just in general, the internet is very fostered and curated around like big stories that capture people's attention to the point that, people will just sometimes make shit up just to kind of, get that story out there or get that big thing going. So I think just in general, I think that's really important for us to consider.
Yeah, and it's
right. I think, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
But I think it's really important too, because when you have the, like, I think as far as, the best ideas, I think the progressives have really good ideas on a lot of issues and a lot of popular ideas, but they're definitely not the majority as far as the power structures. And so when you are running a campaign like that has good ideas but doesn't have the money and the brand recognition, it's really important to have that core group. So when they just when there's just people bailing at the first sign of any kind of distress, that really puts a hole in it. And the thing we were even talking about, the short form content. One thing TikTok and platforms like the short form content is it cuts out all the nuance. So you just get like the headlines of a story, and then people will go off of that, and it'll be, oh well, this guy did this and that, and so we can't support him anymore when you don't get in all the details of the situation. And I think that happens a lot. You even see that with a lot of YouTube commentators, like their videos went from 10 minutes long to now they're 6 minutes long. So people consuming content at a lot smaller of a and not as long of form, and it cuts out a lot of the details of most of the situations.
Yeah, and it just keeps pushing us, farther and farther into extremes, right? Like the nature is about how we choose candidates, like our election processes, the nature of like social media in general is just pushing us to be really quick and really, like what you're saying, like there's no nuance anymore to thought, because you got to just punch something out in 60 seconds, and so there's no discussion being had. So if you don't hit those, points that the majority wants you to say, then, you get hit, you get attacked on social media. So
yeah, I think what is it? There's also this like perception, especially with like online commentators, people who have a platform that like they're like perfect individuals, which like none of us are. I think in a lot of ways, like, I mean, I said a ton of stupid shit. I acknowledge that. There's probably a lot of stupid shit when I went through my libertarian phase, which I'm not proud of. That's probably still out there that people can pull up and use. But I think that it's really important to acknowledge that like everyone kind of like, I think it's important to acknowledge the growth. I think like in a lot of ways, people can grow. And I think as the left, if we're trying to bring people over to our side, we can't be so hostile to people who came over to our side, but at one point weren't totally there. It's like the whole thing you were talking about with Cenk Uygur. Like, I'm not a huge fan of him for other reasons. I don't agree with some of his takes, but like, this is progress. Like, obviously, like, I'm further left, so I disagree with a lot of liberals, but like at the end of the day, I'd rather have someone who's like able to be molded into, the ideals that we believe in, rather than someone who's still like holding that. So I think it's important to have the balance between holding people accountable, but also allowing them to grow.
Yeah. Discussion's important. And if you're just stifling all that growth that you're talking about because, you're virtue signaling or whatever you want to call it, then yeah, it's impossible to get people over to, this side, of the aisle, I guess, because they're too afraid of their past, or they're too afraid of you just telling them that they're, what their ideas are stupid or whatever,
Right, and I think it just the nuance is something that I've always felt has a thing that is very big on the left. Like I've always said for as long as I've been interested in politics, that it's very easy for someone initially just to end up on the right, because it's like these very like patriot, freedom, America, like, you know, guns, liberty, like that's kind of their whole ideology. Like it goes no deeper than that. Like a lot of, you know, things that Democrats push for, and especially progressives, they like require more details. And I feel like the left is starting to do more of like these broad you know, generalizations. And yeah, I think Cenk is a really good example, because yeah, while I don't, you know, like there's some things I definitely don't agree with Cenk on, but I would love to have him in Congress because of like his firebrand type of personality, and being not, you know, bought out by corporations would be great to be in Congress. But, you know, when the Sunrise Movement and then Justice Democrats pull their support, and then, you know, the only time he gets on, you know, national TV, they're like, oh, well, why did your own group that you started kick you off the board because you said X? You know what I mean? Like it's a very easy narrative to go with that. Well, you're just I think he like at one point in his life denied the Armenian genocide, which is, you know, extremely dumb, but it was, you know, 20 years ago, and you know he was a Republican then. So, and it's like, well, okay, well, yeah, this guy clearly had some really cringe takes, but you know, he's literally his group is why we have AOC and a lot of the progressives in Congress now. So, you know, I think room for growth is definitely a thing, you know, because I'm 32, so I know I've done a lot of dumb shit in my life, and thank God most of it's not on camera. So, you know, I just think that is definitely a place we need to grow. I also see a lot of like it feels like what, like I see like a rise in like more communist takes, and I feel like that kind of takes away from it a little bit too. You know, when you're kind of like going almost too far to one side.
I can agree with you a little bit there. I think that a lot of the time there's kind of this purity culture surrounding leftist ideals in a lot of ways. Like, oh, I'm more communist. You're not a real this. You're not a real that. I think just in general, in a lot of ways, the left shoots themselves in the foot, because
Absolutely.
the right is like almost so unified. Like it's just
Mhm.
they're all kind of together. Like it's like there's kind of, in my opinion, no accountability, which like I feel like we're totally out of balance. Like we're constantly mostly holding people accountable, almost to the point we hold people accountable for things that aren't even their opinions anymore. And then the right is just like, whatever. You know, people were always criticizing journalists on the left, but you know, fuck Tucker Carlson, who just, you know, says whatever random shit that he wants, and no one on the right ever seems to care about him. So at a certain point, like, we have to realize that politics is somewhat, if not completely, a game that we have to play.
Right.
And I guess moral superiority and moral, you know, purity isn't going to get us anywhere when it comes to meaningful like policy reform for the average American.
Agreed.
Right.
And you kind of just beat me to it. I mean, with the Republican Party in general, it's just a very small, like narrow, I guess, platform they have, right? They're just like, you know, God, guns, you know, in America, you know, patriotism. So it's a lot easier to galvanize their base than I would say with the left, where there's so much more diversity of thought between, you know, leftists and liberals and, you know, progressives. Like and what you said about shooting us in the foot, like that's, you know, a tightrope to walk, because it's either we try to win elections, right, or we just like stay true to, you know, our values, or whatever, like how you think about politics. And yeah, it's kind of tough, you know, because there's all this like fighting amongst ourselves, and that you don't really see that from the Republican Party as much. You know, they're much more unified in a way, because there's just a lot less that they talk about, you know.
Right. When it seems to me like every 18 to 24 months, there's like a bigger group that goes like farther left. You know, like say 5 years ago, like I never even heard anybody really talking about, you know, you know, like like I did like 5 years ago. There, oh, we lost someone. Like 5 years ago, there wasn't as many there wasn't as much of a communist kind of part of the left, and you know now you see that more. Like in 2016, Bernie didn't even go for canceling all student debt, which I think is a great thing. That was actually what's her name, the Green Party lady, Jill Stein.
Mm.
Jill Stein, that
Yeah,
was
Jill
her
Stein.
big, and big thing in 2016 was canceling all student debt. And then it's like, well, then Bernie puts it on his platform, and then you see a section on the left. It's like, well, not only does he need to cancel student debt, he needs to, do this more. Like, there's always like, it seems like every 24 months, like there's a bigger section that's like, well, whatever the current set of progressives are pushing for, like, well, now we got to go that much further and put that into the mainstream. It's like mainstream ideas just don't go that quickly. Like, you're not going to get as much support for like some of these ideas as quickly, even though some of them I agree with.
I think there's a really important thing to distinguish, and that's between the online left that we deal with and the actual left. Like, when you said like there's like communists, like there's not even a single like person in Congress right now who's an actual socialist. Like, Bernie declares himself to be a democratic socialist. There's no one calling for the seizing of private property and public ownership of the means of production. Like, that's not. So I feel like, in a lot of ways, yes, people are advocating for bold, transformative policies, and yes, in a lot of ways, it can feel like people are being very vocal. But when we look at it from a policy perspective, like we're still debating on whether or not every single citizen should be guaranteed healthcare, which is considered a conservative right-wing position, or like the bare minimum in these other countries. So I really wouldn't say that America is either moving left, is going more left. I would say that, people are being more vocal about how they want to be that way. But when we look at like the actual political system that we have right now, we're a disproportionately right-wing nation in the policies and values that we hold.
But that's what I mean, though. I want the online left to understand where the actual left is. Like, I see a lot of like bigger creators on like TikTok and Twitter and stuff and YouTube, and they'll talk about like these, super left policies. I'll give you one, like all landlords are scum, or landlords should be abolished, which I can understand, like in like a perfect society, yes. But like right now, I don't think that's like a thing we should be like pushing out to the masses as like a big talking point. But the people online, like, I want them to understand that like you have the platforms to, push out certain things. So like, I hate it when I see like Stalin defense or like Mao defense or, something like that. Like, I wish the online left would understand where the rest of the left actually is.
Yeah.
Most of the people in like the regular world, like, they don't give a shit about any of this. They want healthcare. They want to be able to have their kid stay at a daycare so they can go to their job, and they want to make $20 an hour. And, pushing for more stuff like that and making it more, appealing to the masses is what I want the online left to do. So like the main left, the biggest section of the left in the real world is mostly on board with all that. The online left that has the voice, I want them to understand that more. You know what I mean?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, I would say that also it's important to, I think optics are so important. I think people throw that out the window constantly for, points of, purity, as I talked about before. Like, I think two really good examples are the phrases defund the police and ACAB. Like, do I support both of those? Absolutely. But like, do they need further explanation for people to understand them? Yes. Does the average conservative or average American even know what ACAB stands for? No, they hear it and they think all cops are bad. That's not even what it is. It's bastardized, bastardized system. It's such a terrible, or like defund the police. When there was literally a YouGov poll that found that they asked like the average American, do you think that we should defund the police? It was like 25% said yes. Then they rephrased the question to be, do you think we should reallocate police funds away from like law enforcement specific to more mental health outlets and facilities to prevent crime? And it was like 75% approved. Like, these are simple things. These are literally just words. If we literally market the ideas better, we have so many people on board, but we have people who are like saying, no, we shouldn't change the name from defund the police. That's exactly what we want. I'm like, okay, but would you rather like stay with your like one definition, or like change the words and then have so many more people support it? It's mind boggling how some people can't do the simple things.
Defund the police sounds like defund the police sounds like a right-wing thing, that like something that the right wing came up with to put onto the left. You know 100%. What I mean? That's how bad it is.
It sounds terrible. It's an awful slogan. I mean, in a lot of ways, it just, people don't like truly understand the nuance that goes on it. And I understand that reallocate police funds to more mental health, facilities and such, so that police are not overburdened and stressed with all the different things they have to deal with, does not fit nicely on a bumper sticker.
No, but, it does not.
Yeah.
But like, that's not what we're looking for here. And I get that.
That's that hashtag culture.
100%. That goes back to the attention span thing. People would rather just, and I think in a lot of ways, a lot of people, like, because the only place I think that Republicans have a really good point, and not really good, but just marginally good, is when they say that BLM for some people was a trend. Oh, it absolutely was.
Well,
so many people.
Definitely.
Like, I know some of my friends who posted black squares and they're archived. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, that doesn't do anything. And you just played into their argument that this is absolutely a trend. Or like some people who went to the protests just to like have their artsy photos to put on Instagram, and then they left. I literally saw people who would do that. They went there for 10 minutes, took a picture, and left. So I think in a lot of ways, like, I think that meaningful reform needs to happen, but I also think there's a decent amount of praxis and like practical things that we can do to make our ideas way more marketable that some people just are blind to.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I don't know who's in the marketing department for some of these slogans, but they need to all be fired immediately.
They need to hire whoever was giving Trump his lines, because those taglines stick, man. They really do.
Are. Did they?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He literally got elected off of like
like 5 words, like
when he does a rally, he literally like plays the hits, like he'll like say the word, how like when a band will like go to play a song, they'll be like, Sweet Caroline, and he'll be like The Wall, and they'll like woo, and then he'll start talking about, you know what I mean?
And that's why it goes back to walking that line. Like, is your job like to really stick to your guns on this, or just to make yourself marketable enough so where you can dumb it down a little bit so people can understand, like if you want to win elections, to your guys' credit, then you can't sit here and say these huge long taglines that people just don't understand, or use bad taglines that, that people like can't get behind. So I mean, I never
go ahead.
No, I never liked the term like defund the police, and that's just with my time. I spent a lot of time with police officers and firefighters and people like that, and they just don't like that term, and it's just a losing argument. If I were to walk into one of those rooms and say defund the police, they're just not going to understand what I'm talking about. They're just going to be like, oh, we need more funding. We need better training, yada, yada, yada. I was like, I agree.
And that's exactly what defund the police means.
That's what it means, but it just it doesn't sound good, And former President Obama even brought that up here. He was like, that's a terrible term, that's not how you get people to understand what you're saying. And the nuance, right, to the left is just, it's a lot more difficult for people to digest. So yeah, I mean, we need to come up with better ways of attack, I guess, is what I'm saying.
100%.
So,
and I think almost like, because, with the progressive left, like when Obama says something, or even when like somebody who's, like more like in the neoliberal centrist kind of sphere, when they give a critique of the left, even if it's like actually, on point, kind of like what Obama said, like there's this like doubling down effect, which you see a lot more in the last couple of years. I've noticed like people just double down. They're not like, oh, my bad, I fucked up, or that person's right. And I think like when Obama came out and said that, like, hey, this is a terrible slogan, there was a lot of people, they're like, oh, well, that's, like you said, that's what we want. That's what it's like, yeah, but you have to, like, to the general public, like, it's not a good way to phrase it.
No, it's an ugly term for a lot of people.
And that, and like the biggest thing is like, I want to win. Like, I want Medicare for all. I want, free college. I want universal daycare. Like, I have a little sister, she's 25. She's gonna be mad at me for not remembering, but she has a 6-year-old son that needs to go to daycare, and it's fucking ridiculously expensive. Like, these are the kind of things that like we want, like on the issues. Like, I don't understand, like if it was just like issue for issue, the left wins every time, but because rhetoric is a thing and people's attention spans are short, the right somehow still wins elections, even though they're literally just basically fascist now. Like, they're kicking out what's her name, Liz Cheney, out of leadership simply on the fact that she doesn't think the election was stolen.
It is, what I mean? It is so unbelievably like perverted from like the conservative values. Her and Mitt Romney are literally some of the most conservative people in the country, right. And it's proof that it's not even one, in my opinion, conservatism isn't an ideology. It's a reactionary ideology to any sort of progress that happens. But it's not even about conservative values. It's not about small government, less taxes, freedom, all that, whatever they want to call their taglines. It's literally surrounded around one man, and it's Donald Trump. Either you're with us or against us. And I think in a lot of ways, that's kind of the divisiveness that got Donald Trump elected. It was fear. The Republicans were afraid to ever say anything out against him, because then he'd rail against them on Twitter, and then they might even lose re-election without the support of the president.
And his base is strong. And his base is strong. 100%.
I thought Trump was going to destroy the Republican Party. I mean, he might still, because
I
think he is. Yeah.
Well, it depends whether or not the GOP puts him back on the ticket in 2024. I think they have to, because
I think they
Trump
have
has such a strong hold on the Republican base that he has severed their interests. Because for a long time, Republicans have been able to keep their business interests and the poor middle class white interest in the same place. But now, actually, a lot of richer people would rather have Biden in office, because his level of like consistency with his message, not him tweeting off things that completely just jack up the stock market up and down, is more appealing to them. And they'd even be willing to pay a little bit of a higher corporate tax rate to ensure that like their business wouldn't just like completely go down the drain because Trump is saying something stupid. And, but now, Trump's base is around that. So we'll have to see what happens.
But you know what you're going to get from Biden. He's you know what you're going to get. It's the devil based on the devil you don't. And Trump is a wild card. And I was talking to a lot of, Trump, Republicans, and I was like, Biden is honestly, based upon your fears of the left, Biden is probably your best case scenario,
100%. I wish for the world that like Republicans trying to like satirize the left is so funny, because we're like, yeah, that's it, right there, exactly, yes. Or it's like I made a TikTok that was funny. It was like me waiting for Joe Biden to turn America into the radical socialist country that conservatives keep complaining about. It's like, I don't.
And that's why they've had to go off on like the dumbest shit, like Dr. Seuss. Newsmax did a segment about his dog. Like they're going to go on the dumbest shit because Biden, for several reasons, but he doesn't really go into the culture war stuff. Like he doesn't play into it, even in the way like Hillary and Obama did. Like he doesn't come out and make statements about these kind of things. Like he's not giving them any ammo. And that's why watching conservative media since he's been in office has just been hilarious with cartwheels and knots they've had to tie themselves into. In 1 week, they did the story about Kamala Harris, her book being given to children at the border. It turns out it was one book that some other news company took a picture of. Then there was what was the other thing? I don't even remember. But, it's two like just completely false stories in 1 week. And, it's because he doesn't buy into that, or he's not vocal about like the culture war stuff. And it's really bad for them. That's the only thing they care
about. That's all they care about. Their principles are the culture things. I mean, what is it? Even Michael Knowles admitted this. Like he had this whole thing. He had this whole thing. Why is he against Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill? And like he never really gave a specific reason other than it's change, and somehow the $20 bill change is like the tearing down of like statues. And I'm like, good Jesus, like this is such a like terrible extension, but it really is. They have no policy positions. They have nothing to go off of other than fear mongering about what they think the left is. They don't have anything to present to the American people. Why should you vote for us? Because Joe Biden is going to send Antifa into your neighborhood and send Black Lives Matter and send all that. Like it's just all fear tactics. They don't have any specific policies. Like at the end of the day, like what is it? Like they all voted against the American Rescue Plan that benefited so many people. So many people everyone benefited from that package. That was great. And now they're trying to take credit for it. You should have seen the tweets like Roger Wicker, who was like voted against it and was like, look at all this great aid that's going to come for you guys. I'm like, oh my God.
Like literally like several of them have tweeted out like help is on the way. And it's like,
not because of you
voted against this.
Like unanimously, you guys voted against it.
Unanimously.
Tried to, they did a bunch of like, not polls, but like a bunch of like focus groups on how to attack HR1, the voting rights bill, and they just realized that no matter what they did, they tried to tie it to socialism, they tried to tie it to AOC, they tried to tie it to Hillary Clinton, and this came out in the Washington Post. They tried to several different ways to attack this voting rights bill, and they just decided they're just not going to talk about it. Like that's what they're doing because they have nothing on policy, and for that reason, people like Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, and these right-wing reactionary dipshits have had to just go mask off and be like, Well, actually, we're only worried about the culture stuff, and that's all we're going to talk about. We're not going to have these actual critiques on like, you know, economic policy, and even when we do, it's going to be horrible. Like the Daily Wire guy saying, actually, the poor aren't paying enough taxes.
Oh my God! Like literally,
bro. How are we going to lose to these people? How am I still worried we're going to lose to these people?
You know who doesn't pay enough of their taxes? The poor. We should raise the taxes on the homeless.
Right. Because it's just way
go
too
around
easy.
Go around to their jars and take out like pennies or something. Oh my God!
Right.
Which is
Mr. Custodian, sir, you're not paying enough taxes.
Oh my God.
But it's just too easy to scare people, especially, you know, their base. It's just so much easier to scare them than to educate them, you know?
Well, it's because their base would benefit from the policies we speak about. So they pin us as the enemy, they pin them against us so they can keep fucking them over. Like it's the whole thing,
Right. I mean, and that's what that's one of my when I see like somebody like do a video like defending Stalin or something, it's like, don't give them any ammo. It's like because they have nothing to go on, and like when you do something like that, it's like just there's no reason for it. Just talk about healthcare and how you want like Medicare for all, and you know that'll be more than enough. And it's like you guys talked about Trump being on the ticket in 2024. I would actually rather have that than I think the worst scenario is that Ron DeSantis runs in 2024 with Trump's blessing. Like if it's like for some reason if they have like a falling out, because who knows who Trump's going to be mad at tomorrow for not saying the correct thing.
I don't think there's any way he doesn't run. Like no way. I don't think there's a chance in hell. The only way he doesn't run is if he's in jail, which I don't think is going to happen. So I literally think that he will be on that ticket. And I think the only way it's going to happen is if he runs, the Republicans have to have him running for them, because otherwise he will create a third party and split the ticket and give Democrats and Joe Biden another 4 years if he decides running it. So they have to. So in my opinion, I don't think there's any way I think it's more likely that, you know, the moon falls from the sky than Trump doesn't run in 2024. So
I think the only way he won't run is if he can have a more profitable grift, because Trump is really lazy. Trump doesn't want to do anything. He wants to just make a lot of money. That's why the whole time he was president, he just like did rallies, which has never been happened before. Yeah. And like, that's why I don't understand, like when Republicans are like, oh, Biden's never around, he's not out. It's like, he's like, you know, one, he is kind of old. Yeah. And, you know, but he's like working and doing stuff. Like most presidents don't like just go on TV and do rallies every weekend while they're president. Like that's not a thing. It's never happened before. But if he can find a more profitable grift, like, or as profitable, I don't think he'll run, but I think he's going to definitely milk it till the very, very end.
I don't think it's just money though. I don't think it's just money. I mean, I think it's also power. Well, it's power too, and there's not a single position, in my opinion, other than you maybe could say business interests, people like Jeff Bezos, but like there's really no more powerful position in the world than president of the United States. Like, president of the United States is the most powerful position of any person on the planet, in my opinion. So I don't think there's a chance that even if he could make more money doing this, no, he wants to put his face on everything, go around, like, you know, party all across the country. So I even think the Republican Party, in my opinion, might even try to offer him some other position that gives him more money or gives him more power just for him not to run. But I doubt he'd take it.
Yeah, I mean, it's president or bust for him. You know, there's no other position you can give this man, you know, that would satiate his pride and his thirst for power. But it's like with him right now, like what they're going to run into issues with is that you need a name now for them, you know, to galvanize their base. Because right now, like Trump's name, he's been famous, you know, since before I was born. You know, my entire life, it's just like Trump was synonymous with rich, you know, and wealth. And right now his name is so big, it's just like going to be difficult to get people excited to come out and vote. You know, at this point, that however long this Trump hangover lasts, I mean, you kind of saw it with Obama, with the Democrats. Like
totally
when he was done with office, it was hard to get people excited to go out and vote for Hillary Clinton, you know?
Yeah. You saw it in Georgia for the runoff elections. Trump was lost, and they didn't have him on the ticket. So less Republican. Also, that has to go with the fact that he delegitimized the entire Georgia election process.
He lost them. Yeah, he lost them, Georgia.
Oh, he lost them. I love. Oh my God! I remember like on the stage when Lynn Wood was like, "Don't you go out and vote in another election?" I'm like,
right.
Yes. I'm like, don't
exactly.
Do
Let's go. They're destroying themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lynn Wood, man, he's on another planet.
planet. Oh my god, him and Sidney Powell. And do you see Sidney Powell's using the exact same excuse to get out of her Dominion lawsuit that Tucker Carlson used to get out? That no reasonable person would ever believe something she says.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's and that's why, like, I don't understand, like, because at every level, like, people, like, if you're a Republican and, like, you're seriously, like, you're into Republican politics, you vote Republicans, like, what would it take for you to, like, snap out of it? Because, like, at this point, you have to believe that every media source is against you besides, like, Steven Crowder and Newsmax. Every, like, the FBI, the CIA, all the, you know, ATF, DEA, fucking SHIELD, they're all against you. You know, every source is against you. Every state government is against you, whether it's Brian Kemp, who's the most Republican, you know, he's a Republican. He is straight up conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I have a buddy of mine who's hardcore Trumpy, right? And he's a decent guy, but we just disagree on policy. But he's hardcore Trump guy, and he's like, oh, the media is against everybody, like they hate Trump, yada yada yada. That's why like all these people are coming out against him. And I'm like, Republicans controlled the majority of government for the last 4 years, right? So at like, who is against you, right? You control the Senate, right? You controlled most governorships, most mayors, right? He cherry-picked judges, you know? So I'm sitting here like, when that election happened and there was no fraud found, like he lost dozens and dozens of cases, you know?
Right.
And a lot of those judges
60,
are people
I think 60 cases total. Yeah.
And a lot of those judges are people he cherry picks, you know?
But it's like, how do they square? Like, do you ever ask him, like, how do you square everything is against you? Like, at this point, like on January 6th, Trump tweeted out that Mike Pence was compromised, basically, you know, like how do they square, like, well, everything's just against us, like literally everything, but like our guy's actually right. Like that's like, I just don't understand how you square that as like a full grown adults.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because again, it's just, there's very few issues that they care about, you know? And so all you have to do is talk about those issues, you know, gay marriage, abortion, you know, God, you know, and small government isn't even an issue for them. They just talk about guns and God, you know.
I think most of it too is owning the libs. Like at this point, like I did a video on my YouTube about the Arizona audit, and like every Trumper comment that I got was just about how like I was scared and worried that this was going to overturn the election. Like they're literally doing an audit Arizona to own the libs.
Yeah,
like that's just like the whole ideology at this point is like just owning the libs.
And all they have to do is call us socialist, communist, fascists, which none of which are the same, but all they have to do is just throw that out, and then, you know, we lose the argument in their eyes. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I mean,
yeah, and even though like I worked on Bernie's campaign for like 4 months, but even though like I still think Bernie could have beat Trump, like I think it was good in a way because like for people in the suburbs who really won the election for Biden, just weren't buying like that Joe Biden was a socialist. You know what I mean? And then like towards the end, it turned into, well, he's not a socialist, but he's a Trojan horse for socialism. It's like, whatever that means. Okay. Yeah. Like, so I think in a way he was like the perfect candidate to kind of run in this like period where they're very culture obsessed and like everything is just, you know, about, you know, and all with everything going on with you know, the BLM stuff. And like, I think, but even, you know, even with all that, even with everything that happened, Biden really only won by like 60,000 votes across like 3 states. It might even been like 40,000 votes just because of the way our screwed up, you know, electoral college system works. So like, even though you know, all the stuff we've talked about in the last, you know, half hour, even as batshit as they are, like they're still really close in a lot of states, and they're passing new laws every day to just, you know, now in Georgia, like basically if the government doesn't like, if the current government doesn't like the outcome of the election, they can just change it, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, it's wild. I think it's crazy. All right, I gotta head off for probably like a little while. I'm gonna go eat dinner. Depending on how long you'll be on here, maybe I might be able to hop on later tonight. Who knows? But I'll see what happens. But it was really good talking to you. Good talking to you, LJ.
All right, man.
But yeah,
all right,
definitely good to talk to you.
There's links in the description, guys. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Give me a follow. See you. Bye.
Peace. All right, well, it's like just me and you, man. But yeah, so okay, so you say you're so you have a friend that's like a big Trumper, like
yeah, man. I mean, I dealt with these people my whole life, and you know me. I'm in the military, so you meet a lot of people that are hardcore Trumpies, in the military. And no disrespect to them, a lot of the guys are hardworking people, they're self-sacrificing, all that stuff. We just happen to disagree on a lot of issues, and these aren't dumb people, and so that's why it's very interesting. I think President Obama said that we fall back on our base, upbringing and stuff like that, and fears too often, and so it's hard for people to grow. And so like when they're growing up and they hear these things about what Democrats are and stuff, and I start talking to them, they get really surprised, and they're sitting here just like, oh, you're not what I expected at all. And I'm like, well, you have to get out of where you're at right now. And, they don't have a lot of access to people like me, or, people of color, or people, that are different than them. And so they get very surprised when you're not this scary, devil socialist
that they think. Caricature. Yeah, like a caricature in their mind of like what people on the left are like. And that, well, I mean, that comes from, just the consumption of conservative media. Yeah. And I live in a pretty small town too, but like I don't like, as much as I like talk politics online, like I try to avoid it more in like, my day-to-day life. But like, and it's like my immediate people I'm around mostly aren't Trump supporters, but I have Florida friends that are. And it's just it seems to just come down to just thinking like it's more masculine to be like a conservative or something, that like they have like the soy boy kind of image of anybody that's on the left, and it mostly just comes down to and mostly all cultural stuff. And like even when you start talking to them about like, oh well, clearly Jeff Bezos and this guy are corrupt, it's like, well, okay, well the left is, trying to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, it just kind of, it's like their brain turns off at that. Like once you start getting into like the actual policy solutions, it's like they can't square it with, what they believe in currently.
What's honestly worked for me is just creating relationships with people, because if they can have a good relationship with you individually, then they're more open to having that type of discussion, and you kind of break things down for them. And I was talking to my, oh my gosh, what was I talking about? I can't remember. But basically, just try and create a relationship with people so they trust what you're saying is coming from a good place, and then you guys can have an open dialogue. And they're much more open than instead of just screaming at them that they're racist or that they're uneducated. Like that doesn't work. It really doesn't. Because
that's why I always tell people that, like, who if they like watch my content or something, it's like me telling somebody that I don't know from Adam something about policy is not going to work. But like if you know that person personally and like you can give them like the actual details and break down like the specifics of a certain topic, like you can win them over a lot easier. Like when I did a lot of like the conspiracy videos and stuff, it's like if you're like, oh, you should talk to my aunt or uncle or something, it's like, no, you should take the information and make sure you break it down right, because if you don't, like if you just like say a bunch of half-assed stuff, even if it's right, like, but if you're not fully like, if you don't fully understand what you're talking about, like you're going to lose them. Like you take that and you explain that to them and you can win people over. Like it's hard for like X person on the internet to win someone over.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about it earlier, like with, I guess one of the biggest problems with the left right now is that like, it's a lot of just virtue signaling. Some of it is honest. Some of it's a little for social media, like he was saying about the black squares and things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the way we talk to each other is not conducive either, I guess. Like it just doesn't help to scream at people and tell people truly believe what they believe, at the end of the day, and they believe it just as hard as you do. So you got to have to try to find a way to just talk to people, as simple as that.
There's a whole thing with dunking on people. That's just, that everybody just wants to own everyone, and like a lot of people have asked me like to debate this person or that person. It's like, I'm not, I'd rather just have a conversation with somebody and figure out why they believe what they believe or why this or that, because, I've been wrong on certain things and believed them wholeheartedly, and, you have bad takes and like you grow or whatever. But, the thing I just, there seems to be like more and more, like if you'd asked me like 4 years ago, because it's been a constant talking point ever since I've been involved in politics, that the left just cancels everyone, and I would have 2 years ago, or even hell, 6 months ago, I would have told you that it's really not an issue at all, and it's just completely overblown. But like, now, like it's still like the right wants to hold like congressional fucking hearings about it, which is absolutely absurd. But like now I see it to like, a little bit of an extent, and I think it's not so much like, oh, this is like destroying what we're trying to do, but it's like just a critique I have of like, I see like a certain situation, like say like the situation with Tommy, where like people maybe didn't agree with him on something he said, but he like gave his opinion and why he believed it. But even people that have been following him or been mutuals with him, they're like, oh, fuck this guy. It's like, I don't think that's a good thing to good way to approach situations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot more infighting, right, on our side of the aisle than there is on the other, and we have to be careful about that. I mean, I think when it comes to like Tommy's situation, for example, I think that it was more about his delivery than what he was actually saying in that situation, and it was really soon, in my opinion, to make that type of reaction to something like that, especially because of the climate we're in right now. People are going to be extra sensitive about these things, and rightly so. But the George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, Derek Chauvin's trial just happened.
It was literally the same day. Yeah,
it was the same day. And
literally the same day. Yeah.
And then bang bang, like no pun intended. But then with Ma'Khia Bryant, that situation happened, and so it was just way too soon to make something like that. But to his defense, I think Tommy earned the right on his platform to be honest in this situation, and I feel like a lot of the backlash he got was kind of disappointing, I guess.
Right.
Because even if you disagreed with him, you know that his entire platform, he's come from a good place, and he's an empathetic person. And I mean, I hate to pull the race card with him, but I think him as a white person as well, as a white, straight man, making the types of opinions he's made over the past year is needed, on this app. And we need an ally like him. Was his take bad? Yeah, it was. But I don't think he deserved the type of backlash that he got, in my opinion. But his reaction to it could have been a little bit better as well.
And I think that was kind of like what got him is, a bigger platform is being kind of divisive and like, but always towards like the right, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but then like but he kind of kept that same energy. And I think he just belabored it, a little too much.
He did.
And you said, it was just like, it's a very sensitive topic, and like in like a different circumstance, like among friends debating like the nuances of a certain situation or why it might not be.
It was insensitive. Absolutely. It was insensitive.
Exactly. Yeah.
A lot of people are hurting right now, and that was just not the take to make at the time. And he got the backlash for it. I will say though, again, it's just, we have to be better at having open dialogue amongst ourselves.
Right.
Because like you said before, there is nuance to a lot of these issues. And if our goal is to win elections and put people that as close as possible resemble, what we believe about politics, then we have to stop fighting amongst ourselves in a lot of ways and shoot each other in the foot, because Republicans don't do that. That's why they win elections,
Right. That's the only reason they win. And the thing they're a lot better at is they will take somebody, like when it goes to trying to mainstream one of their ridiculous ways of thinking, they will take a person that they don't necessarily agree with fully, and it will use them to further their narrative, whatever it is. Like I've even seen like Bill Maher, who's a lifelong Democrat, bash Trump for 4 or 5 years, however, as long as he was in the political arena.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a take, a month ago about, liberals being ridiculous over like COVID restrictions. Yeah. And I've seen tons of people on the right using that and being like, oh, look, see, even, Bill Maher agrees with us, and then pushing out that message. And they've been doing it recently with Trevor Noah because he said, something about masks or something.
Yeah.
But, one thing, the left will never do that. Like, this, like any person that we use to like push a message has to like, not always like this, I'm obviously speaking in general terms, but
for sure,
has to have like a checklist, but like if you like if like say like, like when Bernie, like I get good examples, like when Bernie went on Joe Rogan, it's like he reached a lot of people, and that was, good for, you know, platforming his ideas in that long form kind of conversation, and people actually get to understand what Bernie's talking about. But so many people got mad because, oh, Joe said this, that, and that in the past. And it's like, okay, yeah, that was really stupid. And Joe has a lot of fucking cringe takes. But if Joe doesn't have Bernie on, he's going to have Alex Jones on. And guess what? We don't want fucking people listening to that fucking guy.
No, we don't. We don't.
You know what I mean? I'm actually having this guy, Kirby Ferguson. He did it. He's done a few like documentaries on like conspiracies and stuff. He's I'm gonna have him on tomorrow. He did a thing about Alex Jones and Joe Rogan's podcast they did together. But you know, like that's a problem I see is like we won't use anyone who isn't like doesn't hit the checklist to mainstream any of our ideas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. It's just unfortunate to see. It really is. It's unfortunate that, you know, what we were talking about earlier, like people should be allowed to speak their mind, and if you disagree, then we should be allowed to talk through those things, right? Not like completely cancel people. But yeah, I mean, I think we do it to each other way more than the right does it to each other, and that's just
I think a lot more like people will use like somebody on the on the left, somebody will use someone's bad take to kind of grow their own platform.
Absolutely.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you think this guy, you think you agree with this guy? Well, you really agree with me because guess what? That take was bad, and let me tell you why. You know what I mean? Like, I see a lot of that. Like, and that's, and that's, you know, that kind of trying to like outwoke each other kind of thing.
I don't know how to fix it because the nature of, you know, the left in general is to problem solve, right? Like they're always trying to create new ideas, and they could be far fetched as hell, right? But it's just they try to kick, you know, the ball a little bit farther. And the nature of Republicans is to, you know, bury and stay put, right?
Right.
They're conserving, right? They're sitting here like America is this is what America should stand for, and that doesn't change, you know? So you talk about the Second Amendment, and they're over here like, oh, the Second Amendment is like the fucking gospel for these people. My mistake for swearing, but the Second Amendment is the gospel for these people, and any discussion about it is just seen as being un-American or being an attack on the Constitution. And it's so much harder for us on the left to get ideas out there because we're always trying to change and we're always going to debate each other, right? So it's just like a lot of eating each other alive over these arguments. And those, just the nature of the right is that those types of discussions don't happen. So they come into conflict a lot with their ideas a lot less than we do. And it's just about who can be more Republican in a way.
Like, I think they have like a core set, like they have like a core set list of like things they try to preach to people. And like somebody on the left, like you can be two people that you would consider a progressive, and they could be like never even like come into contact with as far as like ideas they try to like talk and platform. And like there's so many like different like more nuances to it, and I think like we don't have like a set list of things people know we believe in. You know what I mean?
No, because a lot of time we're just always constantly changing. The party is always changing,
and I think that leaves a lot of room for people who would, you know, don't have our best intentions. You know, certain corporate media, the right wing, to construe and like twist and like, oh, this is what, you know, the progressives, they're just, you know, they just want to cancel everyone and this and that, and they don't want anybody to own land, and it's like, no, back the fuck up. That's not what, you know, 99.9% of us believe. But, you know, it's like, that's one thing I think we just really, it all comes down to messaging at the end of the day. That's what campaigns are about. And that's especially like local elections, because you usually only get one shot. If somebody might hear like a local election's going on, you might hear one radio message, or you might get one flyer out. They need to know what these, you know, small time candidates are about, because that's where all these laws get changed. You know, all these states are the ones changing the laws as far as voting and, you know, just really anything. And I think that's definitely a place we need to work on some shit. And I really want everybody, especially like on my, you know, little TikTok fam that I've grown over the last year. I want everyone to like be able to get along and just understand like people fuck up. Because I think you would do that with like your friends just in general. And I think there need, you know what I mean?
Done just as bad, for sure. Everybody has. And so, I mean, the discussion needs to be about the issues, and needs to be a lot less personal attacks, for sure.
Right. All right, man. Well, I think I've been going for a little while here. I definitely appreciate you. Yeah, definitely appreciate you coming on. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We are. I'm going to be live tomorrow night. I think 6:00 Central. Pretty sure. Let me double check that, but I think I'll post about it in the Discord or whatever. But yeah, thanks to LJ. His link is down in the description. Thanks for coming, man. Definitely do it again sometime.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah. Yep. Peace out, y'all.
Bye bye.